Number one, what I'd like to start off and ask to our panelists here is really looking at, I know that some of these, most of these districts have been intricately involved at some level of strategic planning, either have already completed it or are beginning to go through it, or some variation of that. Also, going through things like district accreditation. Some I know are either planning for it, going through it. You know, we've already heard about, you know, charter systems and things like that. So the planning process, I'd like to ask, and I'll open this up and see who would like to be the first to answer, but how have you used technology to enhance the planning process? Anybody want to be first at that?
We'll be first with that. Jocelyn?
We've actually used the technology to enhance our planning process by importing, of course, our entire strategic plan, and our school system, of course, is larger than all the other school systems here combined, and then some. But we have a large leadership team, and I can remember us going into leadership team meeting with these huge notebooks. But now we've actually collapsed that into a structure where we're using the meetings modules to connect the strategic plan to our meetings and all of our efforts. And also we're rolling it out to our schools, planning or preparing for that, in order that we will incorporate the school improvement plans as a part of the strategic plan in our in eBOARD. And so we use the technology really to cut down on the paper and to eliminate the spots with the strategic plans on the shelf, and everything is right there and available to us. So it really has streamlined a lot of our processes.
Dr. Fields, you all have what, about 60 schools?
We have
57. Okay.
And 30.
Is that happening at all 57 yet, or are you phasing that in?
We are phasing it in, and really right now we have a redelivery team that's studying how we will roll it out to the other schools. And Dr. Moore has actually experimented with several of the modules, and he's actually using it and leading us in the charge to actually do some more things with it and support our principals as they actually, because eBOARD can be a little overwhelming just looking at it, but breaking it down into smaller pieces, this structure will actually help support them in the redelivery process.
Okay. Any others want to comment about planning, or?
I'd like to just throw in something, and this is a little bit different. I agree with everything you said. We do that as well. We use the eBOARD heavily with our district accreditation, and it was wonderful in helping us go through that process. But after each board meeting, we start working on our next board meeting, and we use eBOARD to help us plan our agendas. We have people within our district who submit items for the agenda, and it is a powerful tool for getting your agenda ready for the next board meeting. So that's a little bit different from some of the things that you mentioned, but I know that y'all probably all agree with me. It is a wonderful tool for organizing your board meetings and for planning and getting them ready. Mark?
Here, and then we'll go over to you.
We're in our second strategic planning, and the first one was very, very different. Of course, we didn't have the technology in the eBOARD at that time. So the plan basically was developed. It was more of an in-house development, even though we had times for stakeholders to come in and comment. But I had to present it to the board, and I presented it to the community at the same time. And then, of course, like most of us do, it was put into a document, and it was a living document, but it was still put into a document which most people could not really, get a hold of. They came and asked us, we would certainly make a copy. But that's the way we were operating. This time around, whether we're talking about the strategic planning process, or we're about to reopen one of our elementaries in a different capacity, or we're talking about building a new school, or when we were talking about charter, every single thing that we do in terms of those meetings, whether there's a presentation that one of the staff members is making or I'm making, all of that is placed in eBOARD. So it's online, it's available. As I said before, I have folks now in our community that are going on and reading. We have an agenda, of course, that we've created. I'm sure you all have your own agendas that you like to use. Part of it is the superintendent's report. there are folks out in the community that are going and reading the superintendent's report that I have placed, and I put a lot of detail in it, because that way they can tell, just like the board can tell, where we've been, what we've been doing. They can look at any maps. They can look at comments. There are so many ways that we can get the information to people, as opposed to before where, you know, if you didn't come to the meeting, you might have missed exactly what was said. So I think that's another way that we've used it, certainly for planning purposes.
Great. Yeah, Dr. Miller?
I wanted to comment a little bit on the strategic planning module. And when we initially went through our district SACS accreditation 4 years ago, and then recently through our charter petition development, which we just submitted in November, we learned that it was very important, and our board members can attest to this, that we're very transparent in our work as we go through those processes. And what we found going through the district accreditation, at that time, we didn't have our strategic plan on eBOARD. We had it posted on our website, and it was a very big document, a spot, as you heard say earlier. But we would carry those books around with us in our carts and go around to all the schools and talk about that process. And as we went through the charter development, we started with our balanced scorecard and our strategic plan in an Excel document. And then, you know, the next steps were becoming, okay, how do we really communicate this? How do we make it more of a living document and not something that is just an Excel file that sits on the computer or that you print off? So we began using that strategic planning module at the district level first, entering our balanced scorecard on that module, and then coming behind that and including our strategic plan, our action plan, because we have to have goals. Then we have to have initiatives and action steps, which is a component of that strategic planning module. Well, once we received the grant, we trained people from each of our schools so that we could then cascade that down to the school level. And so each of our schools now have their balanced scorecards posted on eBOARD that are indeed cascaded. They're mirrored after the district plan. And so we saw the benefit and are very excited about now that we'll be going through district accreditation for our second time next year, and we'll have our entire plan posted on eBOARD, which will help the visiting team, but will also tremendously help us with our internal communications with teachers, principals, community members, and we're going to talk a little bit more later about the new module that is going to help us with that strategic planning and the district accreditation.
Yeah, Dr. Poole?
Just to kind of piggyback off of that with the school level, at the high school level, and I think that's the important piece that I've seen, is to drive it and drive it down to the school level, and then I'm trying to drive it down to the teacher and department level. It's been very helpful for me as a high school principal to make sure that when we do the school improvement planning and strategic planning, that we're aligned with what the district initiatives are. And that's one thing, that it forces you to know the same language, especially in a system as large as ours, but also to make sure that you're utilizing that same language, and then you're building capacity in your building for your teachers to know that same language, and your parents and your school council and even your students. So it's helped with that and made us look outside of just the first goal in our system, which is about the curriculum and about academic achievement, but looking at processes, safety, community involvement. So that goal alignment has been helpful for me. And then the other piece is the balanced scorecard, housing the data, being able to communicate that data. And also, one of the things as we went through a gaps review last year was, how much involvement do my teachers have, and what is their perception? And they said, well, we really as teachers don't have much involvement. This is helping me get them involved in the process. And then the meetings portion, I think, is started to turn into one of my favorite portions of it, because it's keeping me organized, and then it's also allowed me the ability to communicate out reports and get the rest of my leadership teams and my teachers involved, because there's a piece in there where, as we develop our agenda, I can send out items that I want them to report back on. So it's kind of changed the dynamics of our leadership meetings, and just really been a great tool for us at the school level.
Great.